All right, so now that all the madness around the draft and who the Browns are going to pick and who they're going to sign in UDFA, undrafted free agency, all of that has decided, I want to put kind of my overall thoughts of everything that happened in the draft, every pick, put it in one place, give a little bit. I don't want to do a grade because like people get unnecessarily angry if you don't give a pick they like the highest grade possible, and that kind of gets in the way of having an actual conversation about the player. So I'll just give general thoughts, things I like, things that concern me about the pick, and everything else going forward, and then we'll briefly touch over some of the undrafted free agent guys just so everybody knows what the Browns did completely throughout the weekend. All right, so the first pick we're going to talk about is Martin Emerson, the cornerback out of Mississippi State. I believe he is a 6'2 guy, about 200 pounds. Big corner from what I've seen. Lengthy guy, likes to get there physical, use his hands. People are right now debating whether he's going to play on the inside or whether he's going to play on the outside. Now, my recollection isn't 100% clear on what Andrew Berry said, if he even clarified anything. And I think he probably did that thing he does where he's like, I'm going to let, the coaches figure that out, and then coaches tell you nothing. So what I'm thinking for Martin Emerson is it wouldn't make sense to put Greg Newsome on the inside. I've heard that thrown around a lot. And I know Greg Newsome can play the inside, but you don't waste Greg Newsome on the inside, right? Same reason why Denzel Ward is absolutely your best interior corner on this team. He would probably be the best interior corner in football, but you would not waste Denzel Ward on anything but the boundary. You're going to have Denzel Ward on one boundary. You're going to have Greg Newsome on another boundary. Now, where does that leave Martin Emerson? Well, it leaves him in a couple of different spots, right? One, he could be a dime DB, right? Which means, hey, he might not be taking the slot necessarily, but he could be sitting on a seam on the strong side or weak side of the field. So basically, whenever you see trips, right? So trips is three wide receivers unbalanced on one side of a formation. So whenever you see trips wide receivers, you're going to see three DBs there. You would hope to see three DBs there, right? Two kind of closer to the line of scrimmage and normally one offset just in case there's a rub play or anything like that. That's where Martin Emerson would be. He would be the offset corner in that dime package. I think he'll play some inside. I think trying to pin down Martin Emerson's role as like a specific one thing is going to be kind of irresponsible. I think if things pan out with him in the first year, right? We don't know what going forward, but in the first year, he's going to be a specialty corner, right? So if a team has a bigger wide receiver, you're probably going to want Martin Emerson on them because he has the length to combat that. If they have a particularly athletic tight end like a Mark Andrews that we have to deal with in this division, right? You would put Martin Emerson on him. He's going to see some situational work on the seam, in the red zone. I do think you could get away with putting him in the boundary, right? The smaller the field is, the more condensed the field is for the defense, the more likely it is you could see Martin Emerson play some outside. So I think he's going to have to be pretty versatile, since he's going to have to lean on that versatility probably for his NFL career, right? Because he's not fast enough just to sit out there on the boundary. He's probably going to have to get used to that. That's probably, if he hits his ceiling, he'll be a guy who gets moved around a lot. But for right now, for this year, I can see him being used heavily in dime packages and also in red zone situations where they want extra DBs out there, right? So when the Browns play the Bengals, he's probably going to be out there a lot. When the Browns play the Ravens, you might see him out there a lot too. That's kind of what I see the future being for Martin right now. Again, he's the first pick in this draft, but he's also a third-round pick. So the expectations can't immediately be this dude starts and becomes a Pro Bowler, right? But for what he is, I think you can get a lot out of him, and that's where you'll be. Next pick that I'm going to talk about is the second pick in the third round that they had. That's Alex Wright. I'm not the biggest fan of Alex Wright. I know there are others who are. I'm not trying to argue with people. I'm not trying to tell people that they're wrong. I'm not the biggest fan of Alex Wright. He's real long and lengthy, but I don't know. I don't see the strength that I want to see out of him a lot of the times, right? Like if you're going to be that long, I need you to be overwhelmingly strong. Like a Montez Sweat is a great example of this, who is just long, strong, and give wherever he wants, right? It doesn't matter how agile or how bendy he is. I don't think Alex Wright is very bendy. I don't think he's particularly quick, and he is strong. It's just you don't see that strength as much on tape as you would want to, so I have concerns about that. Where do I see him this year? I mean, I don't know if he gets snaps this year. He doesn't seem like the type of prospect that's going to get snaps this year. He seems like a wait and see kind of guy, kind of similar to how we were with Jordan Elliott for a while. And sometimes that pans out. Sometimes, they're Jordan Elliott and we're still waiting for them to do something 3 years into their career. So we'll see with Alex Wright. Again, not my favorite pick of this draft. But, maybe it could pan out. Maybe it could work out there. Then we're going to talk about David Bell, who was the last pick of the 3rd round for the Cleveland Browns. And this was a pick that I like. This is when things just started to turn around completely here for me. David Bell is a wide receiver who did not test well. His numbers are a little bit concerning there when it comes to his testing. But his tape does look good. So you're gambling on, hey, maybe the tape shows me something that he can't. I think I have done this, and I think a lot of people have fallen into this. We compared him to Jarvis Landry, and the reason I think people were comparing him to Jarvis Landry, myself included, was because of the weirdness with the testing, right? You watch David Bell, and he can make spectacular catches on tape. He's running away from defenders on tape, but then you see his testing numbers, and it doesn't match up with what you see. That's the same thing that happened with Jarvis Landry. It's also something similar that happened with another former Browns 4th round pick, Rashard Higgins. That's kind of who David Bell reminds me of. Is a guy who knows how to get open. I think he's a little bit more talented, has more top end speed and more athleticism for those spectacular catches than Rashard Higgins. But I do think he's going to be a very similar player to Rashard Higgins in where you can play him, right? He's going to be an outside wide receiver. I know they're going to try to put him in the slot. I don't know if if he works in the slot. I think he works as a Z. As a Z. And I think that's where he would do his most work because you can have a lot of space and be able to maneuver open windows from that position a lot more often than you can from the slot, which is more about timing and crispness in your route running. So I think ultimately he's a X receiver. I mean, not an X receiver, a Z receiver, somebody you want on the opposite side of somebody who's faster. And that's where he makes his money in the NFL. Again, I think he gets used in a very similar way to Rashard Higgins because in a lot of ways, they're very similar, even though I think David Bell is a little bit more, not polished, because Rashard Higgins was a fairly polished wide receiver coming out of Colorado State. But David Bell, to me, he has more upside than Rashard Higgins, but similar player there. I like it there for pick 99. Let's go to round 4. Y'all already know, man, Perryon Winfrey. I mean, I don't want to spend too much of this video talking about it just because I've spent enough videos talking about Perryon Winfrey. I'm a big fan of this pick. I think Perryon Winfrey, and I stand 10 toes down on this, will be one of the best players in this draft. I don't know why he slipped to the 4th round, right? That kind of shocked me that he slipped that. Maybe that's teams not valuing the position, but then you have the Bengals taking Zachary Carter ahead of him. Zachary Carter, who was also at the Senior Bowl, got outperformed for like 5 days in a row by Perryon Winfrey. They took that dude ahead of him. That's a little bit of a concern. Maybe Perryon's personality is something that turned off some teams and made them a little bit concerned because, he is Perryon Winfrey, right? He is a personality. He is not going to just sit there and give you boring answers at a press conference. That man going to give you a quote. And some people are very uncomfortable with that. And I think ultimately that's why he fell back, because people were just like taken aback by that. But to me, I mean, that ain't no negative. I don't need a defensive tackle to be here sounding like Russell Wilson in a press conference. I don't want that at all. I want me a defensive tackle that's going to sound like Perryon Winfrey. That's the kind of dude that I want to play on my trenches. I understand, they got they got these Harvard guys now running this, and they want these more buttoned up attitudes at all the positions. But nah, man, you playing in the trenches, you playing in defensive tackle. I want you to be the dude that barks in your introduction press conference. Like, I want all my defenders to be the type of dude that would just bark in the middle of a press conference, and that's what Perryon Winfrey brings you. So I like that pick. Now, this is a pick that I think I'm going to surprise people with what my thoughts are on it, because y'all know how I am about kickers. I don't love the idea of drafting a kicker. Now, I think, and I feel the need to clarify this every time I talk about it, because no matter how many times I clarify this, I feel like people purposely misunderstand what I'm trying to say here. But I'll try it again. When I say I don't like the idea of drafting kickers, I am not making some kind of statement that kickers are not important. I'm saying that what it takes to evaluate a kicker and know if a kicker is going to be like a good NFL kicker is not stuff that you can really evaluate, right? All of this stuff is almost mental, right? There's a ton of dudes in the USFL right now that could technically make a 45, a 55. Hell, there's some dudes that do those 65-yard trick shot field goals, right? It's not necessarily can you do it physically, right? It's can you handle the stress of the job mentally. That's something you can't test for. That's something tape ain't going to help you with. And that's something that ultimately, no matter how many high pressure situations that these kickers have been in college, you don't find out to the NFL, because the reality is in college, it's not as stressful kicking the football because your scholarship is there for 4 years, right? As a kicker, or at least 2 years. I don't know how it works, but you have a guarantee that you're not going to be gone that next week because you missed a couple of kicks. Like, you still going to be enrolled. So your life isn't at risk not at risk. Your life isn't at risk of changing dramatically every time you kick the ball. The reality in the NFL is you miss like 3 kicks in a game, you could be gone. You could have been a cold kicker before that. You missed 3 in the game, you gone. That's a different level of stress that you cannot evaluate for in college, because there's no security for a kicker in the NFL. Unless you're Justin Tucker, unless you're one of the best in the game, there is no security for a kicker in the NFL. Now, him being picked in round 4 gives him a little bit of security. Maybe that helps him out and develops him in the long term. But that's the thing I worry about, right? Cade York on paper, you see what he's done at LSU, and it's very impressive. And I don't doubt that he physically can kick footballs in the NFL. But mentally is a whole different question. Remember when we knew when Austin Seibert wasn't going to amount to anything? Well, he not amount to anything, but he wasn't going to amount to being the kicker that we wanted him to be, despite being drafted in the 5th round, was when the Browns scored a touchdown on that opening drive and he missed the kick, the extra point, because he was caught off guard. Like, that's the stuff that just cannot happen. So we'll see, right? And again, Austin Seibert was a very experienced kicker coming out of Oklahoma, kicked in some big games, but when it came to the NFL, it was just too much for him. The pressure was too much. Robert Aguayo, same thing. Robert Aguayo kicked in the national championship game, right? Same thing with Cade York. Hey, the pressure in college, it ain't nothing like the pressure in the NFL, because again, your livelihood is literally at risk every time you go out to kick the football. Like, could you imagine that? Like, imagine you at your job, right? Let's say you have to write reports or do a spreadsheet. Imagine that every time you put an input in that spreadsheet, if you got one thing wrong, one typo, you're fired, or could be fired. Imagine how sweaty you would be putting up that spreadsheet. That's the same thing that goes on with kickers in the NFL. So that's why I'm a little bit concerned about spending that early of a draft pick on him. Because again, it's so random to figure out which one of these guys can really stand up to the pressure. And I know we all feel like we have a barometer, but at the end of the day, it's random. It is random. You don't know. Nobody does, and nobody has a good way of finding out. That's why a lot of kickers who get drafted don't normally stay with the team that drafted them, because it just takes a while to even build that thing up. So, my concerns are there. I've put that on the table about that. But if it works out and you don't have to worry about kicker, and I don't have to hear kicker Twitter for the whole year because we got a kicker, then we good. Then I'm fine with it. 5th round pick, Running back Jerome Ford. Now, I like Jerome Ford. I think Jerome Ford was the main reason why Cincinnati was able to make the college football playoff this year, at least on the offensive side of the ball. Defensively, I think Cincinnati was a terrific team, but offensively, they struggled. Desmond Ridder really struggled offensively, especially against the better teams, but Jerome Ford always came to play in those games. I like him. I think he can be a good running back for this team. My question is like, man, how many dudes are we keeping on this roster? We've already said that Demetric Felton's going to be a running back this year, not a wide receiver. So that's another one. And it seems like they're committed to keeping Demetric Felton on this team. They're committed to keeping D'Ernest Johnson on this team. I would imagine they are committed to keeping Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. But drafting Jerome Ford makes me feel like somebody might be expendable. Right, like they're not gonna go into they're not gonna go into the start of this season in September with 5 running backs on the active roster. That just can't happen, right? So what's the plan there? Because again, a 5th round pick, if that dude shows anything in camp, he's gonna make the team. You've already seen stuff from Demetric Felton. You have Nick Chubb, you have Kareem Hunt. We know D'Ernest Johnson. Like, what are you doing there, and who are we keeping? Again, hey, maybe we just end up releasing or trying to trade Jerome Ford in the middle of camp, but it's one of those situations like, how many running backs can we keep? We already got more running backs than we know what to do with, and now we just added another one who I like and I think is going to be good. The 6th round pick was a Oklahoma guy, Mike Woods. Be honest with you, I don't know much about Mike Woods. I'm looking forward to finding out more about him. I am familiar with the 7th round pick though, Isaiah Thomas out of Oklahoma. He was another Senior Bowl guy, long edge rusher. I think there's some potential you can get out of him. I actually like Isaiah Thomas a little bit, well, around the same level that I was on with Alex Wright. But if you get Isaiah Thomas in the 7th round versus the 3rd round, I obviously feel much better about the value you can get there with Isaiah Thomas. So I like that. I think he could develop into a situational pass rusher, right? I don't think he ever starts for you or you want him to start, but he could be a situational guy. Maybe if he adds some bulk, a situational inside-outside guy that you could plug in specific, like a couple of personnel packages. And then their last pick was Dawson Deaton. Don't know much about him, but he's a center. They got him with the 246 pick of this draft. Now, one thing to note is that the Browns have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 picks in this draft. So they added 9 players in this draft. And all but 3 of them were outside the top 100. Perryon Winfrey at 108. Right? So if we look at this, we know that up to Cade York, right? So Martin Emerson probably going to make the team. Alex Wright probably going to make the team. David Bell going to make the team. Perryon Winfrey going to make the team. Cade York going to make the team. After that, it gets real dicey, right? Like Isaiah Thomas, you could probably put on your practice squad. Jerome Ford, I don't know if you can get him on your practice squad, right? Mike Woods, you could probably put on your practice squad. And that Dawson dude, you could probably put on your practice squad if you want to. But, you know, that there's going to be a line of differentiation after that, right? Because they can't keep everybody on the active roster. 9 draft picks with a team that's as loaded as the Cleveland Browns. Some guys are just going to have to go or be put on the practice squad after a while. So that's something to look out for real quick. Let's just talk about, let's just go over the undrafted guys and talk about that real quick. So the Browns have some undrafted free agents that they're bringing in. I think a lot of these guys are camp guys. I'll point out the ones I think they're going to give an actual chance to. Felix Harper, Alcorn State quarterback. Again, he's probably a camp guy. He'll be on the team throughout training camp, and he'll probably be the 4th quarterback. Well, I mean, technically Baker's the 4th quarterback, but we all know what that situation is. It's fluid, as Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry say. But yeah, that's going to be somebody who's going to be moved around. He's on the team basically because he has a good relationship with Deshaun Watson and some of the people that know him. He was working out in the camp with Deshaun Watson, so there's some familiarity with them there. So, you know, he's a camp arm. Isaiah Weston from Northern Iowa is probably the one guy that they're looking at to see if he can make this team as an undrafted free agent. 6'4", 210, ran about a 4.4 40 raw prospect. But, you know, there's a lot of potential there with that kind of size and speed that he has there. Travell Harris out of Washington State, smaller guy. Mike Harley out of Miami, and then they brought in a tight end. I think that's purely for rookie camp, to be honest with you, right? Because I don't think they're going to add another tight end to play here. But Zaire Mitchell-Payton, who is 6'5", 267 out of Florida Atlantic. I think former teammate of Harrison Bryant, if those years match up, because I know Harrison went there. Brock Huffman, Ben Petrula. Defensively, they got a couple of guys, Julius Falk Jr., DeAnthony Bell, Silas Kelly, and Glenn Logan. That's what they have right now. If there are players added, it's after I made this video, so let me know about that in the comment section below. But that's kind of a recap over the Browns draft weekend, everything that they did. Overall, I like it. Obviously, I like it because I got Perryon Winfrey. But other than that, I like it because I think you got some interesting players and some interesting spots. Not everybody is going to make the team from this draft. That's just the reality of it. This team is loaded. This team is a championship window team. So I think 5 of these dudes have spots. And then, between the undrafted guys that everybody picked in round 5 and later, there's probably like 3 spots, right? And we'll find out what those kind of battles are like. But I like what they did here. I'm not in love with this draft. I think I liked the other 2 drafts that they had better. But to be fair, they had first and second round picks in those 2 drafts. We only worked with third round picks in this draft, so that's going to make a difference, right? But even then, I feel like you got some good players in this draft. And let's be honest here, man. Yeah, you got 9 picks. They're all after round 2. You're happy if you get 2 starters out of this draft class. And I think, you probably get 2 with Perryon and David Bell, or maybe you get 2 with Perryon, Martin Emerson, or you get 3 or 4. I think you can, if you get a couple of starters out of here, that's a win. I think if you get 3 starters, that's a home run. If you get 4, hey man, toss it up. Like, you did your thing. This will be a draft that kind of shows you the strength of the Browns scouting department because, we've been giving Andrew Berry some credit for some things that, were layups, right? And it's important to give credit for those things because not everybody hits the layups, but they were layups and we have to acknowledge it, right? Like in 2020, last year, drafting JOK when he falls to the second round. That's obvious, right? Greg Newsome was a pick that we knew that was going to happen a while. Jedrick Wills, right? Same thing like that. And then when Grant Delpit falls to you, you got to take him there. So this is going to be more difficult for them than what they've had in the past years. So I'm interested to see how this class turns out. That's my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. But again, guys, thank you for watching. You all have a great day. Have a good night.